Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today is episode 161, and for today's episode, I'm going to be doing the third part in my essentially DJ Sprinkles series. If you look back in my channel if you happen to care which episodes were the most popular, my DJ Sprinkles episodes have gotten more views than most of my other videos by a wide margin. I think the first Sprinkles episode that I did might have been shared somewhere on social media and is up around 3,000 views, which is pretty good for my channel. And then the second installment of Sprinkles that I did maybe 2 years after that got about 500 or 600 views, which again is still good for my channel. My videos average around 2 to 3, maybe 400 views typically. I'm not going to do too much history on Sprinkles in this episode, and I'm not going to tell as much of a backstory because I have 6 records that I want to talk about, and I also already covered that. So if this episode or if this music is new to you and it intrigues you, look down in the description below. I'll give you direct links to episodes 1 and 2 of the Sprinkles series. You can go and check them out there. I think with those 2 episodes plus this, we're getting pretty close to me being exhausted with all of the crazy, awesome Sprinkles related records that I have. Maybe if she ends up releasing more content and like more tracks, more vinyls in the future, I'll come back in a few years and add another, I guess, a 4th installment here. But just a quick background: Sprinkles born in Minnesota. As you can imagine, with Terry's musical taste and just the whole like transgender identity, probably felt like an extreme misfit. I'm sure, right? So justifiably so, moves to New York City, where that would be a much easier place to exist with that type of persona, right? You're just surrounded by more people that understand you and can relate to you. So I really don't blame Terry for moving to a city after being, born and raised in like a rather podunk backwoods central, Midwest town. That being said, I think the social topics and strife and anger that you'll hear in a lot of Terry's records comes from that New York upbringing. I think there was a lot of culture and a lot of influences that come out specifically in the vocal samples that you'll hear in Terry's records. There's always like a super obscure snippet from something. Like it could be from like a riot, an interview, like a TV show, something that is just pulled out of completely left field. I think he just has a very good ear for sampling and decides to. It's almost like the tracks are built around the sentiment of the vocal snippet. So I've always considered Terry to be a pure artist to the highest degree. There are people that come and make electronic music and they're like, oh, I'm gonna get my computer and I'm gonna get all of my like standard issue production equipment, my KRK5s and a synth and a drum machine and all that. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Terry's setup looks like, but it's probably got some really old school badassness to it. And I really wouldn't be surprised if the way that she makes music is considered like out of the ordinary, out of the box. It just, his tracks sound so much different than other people's records, and that can even be reflected in when I'm trying to mix them and blend them at home. I'm never quite sure where to put the like the meters on the gains, right? Because Terry has monster bass, and that can kind of throw the meters off. So it's like, do I want to get this close to the red line, knowing that the mids and highs are going to be a little bit lower? Like it's just his tracks have a different shape and dynamic to them. That can also be reflected in when I was recording the samples for this episode. You can look at the waveforms of a typical Terry remix, and it's got a lot more chop and up and down to it. It's not like a brick, like like a boring techno track is like a rectangle waveform with just little just like dips in the top, but Terry's are like boom ba boom ba boom, like really choppy. And I think it just shows that she's making music that's coming from somewhere out in left field, and I really love it for that. So without going too much off on a rant, I think I just paid him pretty good service there. Let's get into the tracks. Like I said, I have 6 of them for you today, and let's get started. The first is one of my most recent acquisitions. This is Matt Tolfree's Encarta release. Matt Tolfree, not sure who he is, and I I never heard of. I would not have heard of Matt Tolfree if Sprinkles were not doing the Encarta remix here on the B side. I stumbled onto this in a YouTube mix that a YouTuber, I can't remember his name, had done like a deep house mix, and this was the third track in it, and I was like, I can't believe how good this is. You know, deep house has gotten totally abused, in my opinion, as a genre in the last probably 5-10 years. Like, people call everything deep house, and there's a lot of weak deep house out there, like just very synthetic sounding and not like it doesn't have heart. This is as pure to me. This is like as pure as deep house can get. Sprinkles doing this Encarta remix. As you would expect with Sprinkles, just massive, deep, nasty bass that it's like only she knows how to do it. And the deep house undertones are very like classic, like something sound banks that would have been pulled from the 90s. So one of the other remarkable things about this is how cheap it is. So this has been out for 11 years now, and you would think if the price were going to blow up on Encarta, it would have done it already, but I think it's still like I got this for maybe $18 plus shipping in the US at the time. So I think a total steal. And if people, want to pay $150 for another Sprinkles record but ignore this, I guess that's up to them. All right, and moving on to our second record for today. This is Mark Fell and DJ Sprinkles with the Complete Spiral EP. Complete Spiral. There are 3 Mark Fell and DJ Sprinkles pairings, like production pairings that I know of, and I think they're all good. So if you're a Sprinkles fan, they all get my stamp of approval. You can get them for around $15 to $25, and they're pretty easy to get in the U.S. That's another good thing about Sprinkles records, that they're good for U.S. buyers, because Sprinkles is based in the U.S., so I guess they just get better distribution over here. But the track I wanted to feature on here is called Complete Spiral. Another really nice deep house track. It's really long. I think the duration is maybe 12 minutes, if I remember correctly. Takes up the entire B side of this record, and I wanted to feature it because it kind of reminds me of some of those weird tracks that you hear that have an odd sound time signature to them. I think this is actually a pure 4/4. I don't think there's any time signature play in this, but at the same time, I have trouble figuring out where to drop the needle in it. Like I guess if I start the record from the beginning, I'm fine. But if I would try to get a cue point later on in the record, it's like I can never like get the beginning of a 64 or a 32. Like you get lost in it. And I'm sure I would bet money that the reason that it's called Complete Spiral is that it's sonically designed to throw you off. I mean, all it would take is something a little bit off kilter at the end of those like 16 beat series to kind of make you feel like, oh, wait, did we just start another one, or did we just end one? There's something a little bit syncopated or weird about it that just makes it funky, and I think that's what makes it cool. And I mean, for people that like to smoke, right? This is the kind of thing that I think you could get lost in because your brain would just sit there and try to concentrate and figure out like where you're at in the track, and you're never gonna find it. So again, this is DJ Sprinkles paired with Mark Fell, another excellent deep house producer, and their track Complete Spiral. For my third secret weapon pick, I wanted to go a little bit off the beaten path, right? Like if you're a Sprinkles fan, it's pretty hard to from you know all the Sprinkles records, right? Because you can either search for Terry Tamlets, or you can search for Social Material, or you can search for Sprinkles. I mean, there's nobody else named Sprinkles doing records out there, and you'll see all the remixes. But for this, I wanted to go a little bit off the beaten path and just kind of give a shout out to one of Sprinkles' remixers. So this is a pretty nostalgic record for me. I don't know why. I think it's because of this old Mule art. When I started collecting in 2004, and Mule was like, I mean, they're still doing Mule electronic releases as far as I know, but there's something about this era that is really nostalgic for me. It captures like when I was actually DJing out and when I was really super into exploring new labels and new sounds. So I don't know. I always liked Mule releases, and this is from 2007, right in the heart of the minimal era, which I've notoriously talked shit on this channel. You know, I probably pointed out how bad minimal was at least 10 times on this channel, and I'll do it one more time. But from 2006 to 2010, minimal had kind of like taken over as the popular genre, like the genre to produce if you wanted to stay relevant and make money. And a lot of those tracks sucked. But Terry here allowed Loco Dice to remix his track called Class. It's Social Material Class. And Loco did an excellent job with it. And I kind of wanted to also veer off on a quick tangent here. Loco is in the decade of the noughties. Loco was an outstanding producer. I mean, in 2002, Fat Dope Shit, very tribal, maybe with tinge of progressive, and then over to Cadenza in 2005, and doing some really good records on Ovum in '05 and '06, and then also appearing on Cocoon. So in the minimal era, I'll say from 2005 to 2008. Oh, and also capping it off with his 7 Dunham Place album, Loco Dice was just absolutely crushing it, and I really do. I miss him as a producer. I mean, tracks like this is a minimal record worth keeping and still worth having on my shelf, in my opinion. It's just Loco's just adding like his a nice like subdued, relatively timeless, minimal touch on Terry's original material here. But he was Loco was a genius back then. I think after you got to maybe about 2010 ish, it seemed like he wasn't sure which genre to keep producing in, and he might have lost his way or ventured out into like the same similar territories as like Armand Van Helden. Like if you notice, I don't even know what genre he's making anymore, but he's still making some kind of like weird music where the tracks are like 2 or 3 minutes long, and I guess it's designed for young people. And I wonder if Loco ended up like sort of taking a wrong turn, because it's like he had all the talent there, so it's like if it was there, it still is there, but he just never seemed to find a home again for his sound. But all of his classic records to me still are gonna have always have a place in my heart. So thank you, Loco Dice, and Terry, thank you for having somebody out of the ordinary remix you. I think it turned out great. This is Social Materials Class, remixed by Loco Dice. And another shout out to kind of like an artist that was paired with Terry. This is the Hard Rock Striker series. I believe there's a Hard Rock Striker either CD or double CD with I don't think it's mixed. It might be unmixed, but just with tracks that Terry either grabbed or wanted to feature as part of a series. But either way, in the vinyl, I know the vinyl series better than I know the CD representation of this. There's 3 vinyls in the Hard Rock Striker series, and to me, this is like the one to have. There's 2 others, and those have good reviews on Discogs, but they're kind of like more housey than I like to go. So it's almost like they're good records, but not for me. I definitely have to give a shout out here to this M.A.M.P record, this M.A.M.P track on here. It's called Outer Rim 64. M.A.M.P is an eccentric producer. You sort of never know what you're going to get with him. He's obviously extremely talented. He puts out a lot of sounds. I guess it's generally house or tech house, but sometimes with ambient touches and such, like that one he did on Smallville. You never know what he's going to do, but to the extent that you never know what he's going to do, he really caught me off guard with Outer Rim 64, because it's like severe after hours gear. I mean, it's like it's nasty late night, like drugged out tech house, in my opinion. I remember I was actually playing like at a very casual after party thing where like, hey, let's go back to our friend's house. The club's closing at 2 a.m. The club's closed at 2 in Philly. And, let's go back to my friend's house, and, if you have a USB stick, you can jump on the decks, and we're going to listen to tunes for a couple hours. So I go on, and I start playing Outer Rim 64, and I remember there were 3 people on the couch, like, sitting across the room that just kind of looked at me sideways, like, why the F would you play a track that is this depressing. It sounds like it's drilling me down into the center of the earth. And I was like, yeah, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Yes, that's exactly what I was going for. This is a mind scrambler of a track. This is meant for people that are not in their right mind. And I love it. I love it. All right, now back to an actual Sprinkles remix here. This was one of my proudest acquisitions that I made in January or February of this year. This is Francis Harris and Francis Harris, the You Can Always Leave EP on Scissor and Thread. Came out in 2013. I missed it. The price went up and up and up, and I somehow caught some guy selling it for a reasonable price. I think I got it for $40 back in February of this year, and I was very happy to finally get it. Francis Harris is known for his melancholy gray cloud sound. It's actually pretty appropriate because I'm looking out the window here and it's just kind of like a rainy, drizzly day. It's a perfect day for me to record this episode. But Francis Harris, Scissor and Thread, you're always going to get that sort of like subdued, melancholy, low-key, I'm not sure if I'm depressed or if I'm healing. That whole aura permeates the label. There's not too much happiness beaming out of the Scissor and Thread speakers. Sprinkles. One of the things I like about Sprinkles remixes is that, similar to Joe Claussell, they're almost like they're more like re-edits and overdubs. Like Joe Claussell has overdubs series where he sort of like, yeah, they're like captures of the original track, and then he adds pieces on top of them, as opposed to just completely starting with a completely fresh cake. So you can tell that, like, you can hear strong semblances of the original track in Sprinkles remixes. Like 70% of the original is probably in there, but what Sprinkles always adds is that trademark bass that nobody else seems to be able to reproduce. So here you have Sprinkles, who's known for making sad records. A lot of Sprinkles ambient is sad and just pushes you down, or maybe helps you feel certain feelings, maybe is a better way to say it. One of the things I noticed in You Can Always Leave is that it has a nice steel drum in the Sprinkles remix. And, you know, if you think about a steel drum, right, you're thinking like Jamaican music in general, right? It's a very happy sounding drum. It's almost hard for that drum to sound sad, but somehow, some way, it sounds sad in here. Like somehow Francis and Sprinkles just brought that steel drum down and made it feel its feelings. All right, and my sixth and final pick for you today is not a Sprinkles record, but it's one of the artists that Sprinkles likes to work with a lot. So if you're familiar with Sprinkles' remix catalog, you've probably stumbled onto the Will Long remix series. There are, I believe, 3 different vinyl sets in there. It's a color series, so there's like ivory, maroon, I can't remember, clay, I think, is one of the colors. So I think maybe 7 tracks in total, where Will Long did his nice, like, very pure, simple sounding, not simple like dumb sounding, just almost like minimalistic deep house, and then Sprinkles would do an overdub. So maybe the Will Long track was 11 minutes and Sprinkle did it an overdub, and it comes out to be 12.5 minutes. And those are very, very popular. They're also really affordable. I think they just pressed enough of them that the price just, for at least until this point, has just never really gotten up over 25 bucks or 30 bucks. I think that's due to volume, though, not due to the actual quality of the music, because there's some really epic Sprinkles remixes on that series. But so Sprinkles paired with Will Long, and that got me looking at Will Long, which allowed me to discover this here. And this is Lindstrom. Lindstrom, limited exposure for me on Lindstrom, but what I do know, I think I'm just shooting off the cuff here, I think Lindstrom is like house, disco, new disco influence, appearing on that 2020 label, at least back in the day. I would not normally be buying that type of genre. I've pretty much chased all of the new disco out of my collection, just sold them off or given them away. It's just ultimately not a genre that I want to hang on to. But Will Long came and did a really nice remix of Tensions here. And if you told me that this Will Long track had the assistance or help from Sprinkles, or it's almost like Sprinkles gave Will Long the secret sauce to the sub bass, the Sprinkles sub bass, because this thing will rip your subwoofer. But if you're not listening on a speaker that's going to be able to represent like those absolutely lowest deep frequencies, you're going to miss it. Like if you're listening to this just on a computer, on earbuds, this sample's going to sound like relatively lifeless to you. You need to hear the bass. The underlying track is typical of Will Long tracks, where it's more like a sine wave. It's not a progression. It's not a ramp up. It's like, here's some elements, I'm gonna bring them in, now I'm gonna take them out. I'm gonna bring them in and take them out. Bring them in and take them out. And it just lets you ride that wave for, I guess this might be like a 10-minute duration here. But if you're feeling just kind of like mellow and you just want to hang out and put something on and just vibe out in your house or with some friends, the Will Long Tensions remix is for you.
It's one thing, talk about doing something. If we want to do it, let's start getting our chains off now. Gonna have to do that.
All right, this concludes my Sprinkles episode. I hope you all enjoyed this. Terry, I hope one day maybe somebody sends you this video and you get to watch it. I hope I didn't say anything that was too incorrect, but I really do admire you as an artist. I love your music, and I look forward to hearing more remixes from you. So thank you very much, Terry, and thank you all for listening. Take care.